The Browns may be taking calls on the number 2 pick, but when push comes to shove, they're going to be staying put and selecting Travis Hunter. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast. I'm proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. The Browns won't be trading the number 2 overall pick despite some new reports. Crazy enough, it does look like the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Browns' biggest rivals, are the gatekeepers of the rookie quarterbacks in this class. And an important reason why Travis Hunter makes sense at number 2 that hasn't been talked about enough. Oh, and a noticeable and important Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah sighting. How about that? I do want to thank you for being in every day with the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed with bonus content on some weekends as well, and it's totally free to you. All you got to do, hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you listen to your podcast, and of course, at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel, where you can also get involved in the show by sharing your thoughts on anything we discussed today in the comment section. This is your team, so be part of the conversation every single day. And today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Peter Schrager of ESPN reported on Tuesday that both the Browns and the New York Giants, drafting one spot after the Browns, are fielding calls on their respective picks from teams that are maybe looking to trade up earlier in the draft to take certain players. Now, I'm not doubting Schrager's reporting here. I'm sure there are some calls being made, especially now that the Titans have all but told everybody, we're not trading out, we're staying put, and signaled that the draft starts at number 2 because they're taking Cam Ward that's kind of been known now for well over about 2 months. So that seems etched in stone. Teams that maybe have interest in that next grouping of players, whether it's Hunter, whether it's Abdul Carter, whether it's Ashton Genty, they now maybe want to get up and get those guys and guarantee themselves one of these blue chip players in this class. And so it makes sense that calls would be being made. Now, I still think the Browns don't end up trading out of this spot. I think they are in a position right now where you are in rebuild and looking to add talent quickly. Now, listen, there is a case to be made, and I've even made this case throughout this offseason, that trading back for a rebuilding team makes a ton of sense. You could theoretically trade out of the 2 spot, go down to like even 5 or 6, and put yourself in a position where you still end up with a really good player, while also adding a bunch of draft capital. But given what Andrew Berry has said about Travis Hunter, and I don't want to listen, this could all just be like a smokescreen, right? Like this could have all just been set up to put them in a position to try to entice somebody to trade up, especially with how the conversation has evolved around Travis Hunter over the course of this process. At the beginning of it, it was like, well, he's a corner first, and that's that. Then it became like, can he play both ways? Then the conversation sort of pivoted to like, he could be a wide receiver too, and he could be a damn good one. And then it became like, oh, he's Odell Beckham Jr. 2.0 and whatever, all this different stuff. And it became like it just became a different animal. The conversation very much evolved and changed and flipped on itself. And so I understand where like now all of a sudden there's so much love for him as the pick that it seems maybe a little suspicious. And I can get that. I can certainly respect the fact that it feels that way in some respects. But I do think that the Browns have been set on Hunter being the guy for quite some time now. And it is the chance to add a player that does something nobody else can do and helps you sort of, I don't want to say it fully helps you kill 2 birds with 1 stone, because he's not going to play corner full time here in Cleveland if he ends up being the pick that they make it to. But he does allow you to do so many different things. He's so versatile. Why not take a chance? And for a team that needs talent and an infusion of talent, it makes a lot of sense to get a player of Travis Hunter's caliber. So I ultimately think that they're going to stay put and take Travis Hunter. I also think about the fact that if you trade back to 6, there's been so much said about how prospects like 4/5 through, 30 to 45 are graded similarly. Like there's not a massive drop off from some of these other players versus like the guys that are at the top of this class are the standouts that you want on your roster to sort of change the outlook of your team. There's just not a ton of blue chip guys in this class specifically. And there's not like a ton every year, but like this year, there's only really like 3 guys that are considered blue chip, and they are Hunter, they're Carter, and they're Ashton Genty. So if you're not getting one of those guys, you can find value in other picks. And especially with Cleveland drafting at 33, there's a chance they could get back up into like the 20s and still get a player that's graded closely to a guy that's going to be drafted in like the top 10, just based off of how the evaluations have sort of played out this offseason. And that's from what the experts are saying. The guys, the people in the know on this stuff are saying that is the truth. So understanding that, I just think Travis Hunter makes sense for this team at this point. I didn't necessarily think that in the beginning, but because the Browns have said they're going to be patient here and they're not going to force the issue on quarterback or in any certain situation, it makes sense to stay put and just take best player available. And for them, it feels like that is going to be Travis Hunter, and that's who they're going to take. Now, you can make the case for Abdul Carter too. I get it. I just think when you're talking about 2 players that are both going to be really, really good, you start getting into more of like the nuance of each player. And for somebody like the injury concerns with Abdul Carter are there. I think that's one thing for me. Like, do you want to risk the chance that like that foot becomes something bigger, or the shoulder is a concern? I also think too, like when you're splitting hairs on guys, you do sort of draft, you probably lean more into what you need more. And that is a wide receiver over somebody like a defensive end, even if he's going to be super talented. I can understand where their head's at with a potential move like that. And so I do believe Hunter's going to be the pick and that they will stay put. But it's not surprising that there's reporting now that they're taking calls. This is the first time in the modern era, the new, whatever they call it, the common era, that every team has its first round pick, its original first round pick, this deep into the draft cycle. And if they all make their picks, it would be the first time, and really if there's no draft pick trades, it would be the first time that there wasn't a pick traded in the period of like the new league year and the start of the draft since 2014. So basically, like there's always at least been some first round draft pick movement in that window of time. 2014 was the last time that it didn't happen. And that's on top of like other years where there's been draft picks sort of swapped earlier years where teams don't have their original pick. So it's a rarity to see it get to this point and have everybody still own their original picks. But I think the Browns aren't going to necessarily move theirs. Maybe the Giants get enticed because the Giants have been linked to Shedeur Sanders. Maybe there's a place where they can trade back to and they take him and it makes a little bit more sense for them value-wise. But I think the Giants are in a similar boat where they're like, listen, we're in a great spot, or we're in a spot to take a player that can be like a future cornerstone piece for us. Why not pull the trigger? And so I ultimately think both these teams will stay put. But of course, draft week, you get reporting that there's teams looking to move. And if it does still happen, because as Andrew Berry would say, he's not closing the door on anything. That's his go-to line. Anything can happen. If they did, it would take being blown away, I think, for them to move off of it at this point. Because my sense is they really do love Travis Hunter and what he brings to the table and what they can potentially use him, or how they can potentially use him here in Cleveland on offense, but also somewhat on defense as well. Speaking of finding a quarterback, though, for both the Browns and the Giants, probably at some point in this draft, it is kind of ironic that it feels like the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Browns' biggest rivals, are actually the gatekeepers of these rookie quarterbacks. I'll explain coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. The NBA playoffs are officially here, especially here in Cleveland. The Cavs series with the Miami Heat is underway, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bet if your bet wins. I'm going to be betting a ton on the Cavs throughout this postseason run. They're already up 1-0 on Miami. Chance to make a deep playoff run here. Maybe meet the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. So you have a good amount of time here to get in on the Cavs, but really any of these teams. The Western Conference matchups have been a lot of fun. Nuggets, Clippers, Lakers, Wolves, both those series have been awesome to this point, among others. So don't miss out. I love that FanDuel makes it so easy to pick your favorite team, and you can dive into player props. You can even use or combine your live prop bets in same game parlays for a chance to win even bigger while you're tuning in to all the NBA action this postseason. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com right now and claim your $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Good luck. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends at Epicor. Every team knows the value of hard work and taking pride in what you build and practicing every detail to get the best results. But no one player, no matter how amazing, can do it all alone. Working together makes getting the win easier. At Epicor, the All-Stars are the hardworking manufacturers and distributors who create and deliver the things we all need, from aerospace to electrical to medical devices. Epicor ERP solutions are created by industry experts to help make every day easier. Seeing your whole supply chain is easier. Managing logistics is easier. Responding to price changes, also easier. From small businesses with big dreams to growing enterprises with global visions, we'll equip you with the right tools to move forward, think ahead, and lead the way. Because as the clock ticks down, you need to make the most of every hardworking minute. Easier doesn't cut corners. Easier finds the lane. Discover your success at easierwithepicor.com. That's www.easierwithepicor.com. Alrighty, so as I alluded to, the Pittsburgh Steelers, ironically, are sort of the gatekeepers of this rookie draft class. Because I have continued to ask the question, when is the run on quarterbacks going to happen? We know Cam Ward's going one. We know Shedeur Sanders could fall somewhere in the, really anywhere from like the top 5 to like the end of the first round. It could be where Shedeur Sanders ends up going, just depending on a team's appetite to maybe trade up and get him, or any of those teams in the 20s and how they feel about him, and maybe trying to draft him at that point and get the value of a player that I still think has a first round. It could be a first round talent. And so like but after Shedeur Sanders goes, that next group of quarterbacks, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, you could, I think, throw Tyler Shuck in there, maybe like a Quinn Ewers. I think Will Howard's a little further down on boards. I think even Quinn Ewers is to an extent, but those are some of the names that sort of pop up next from this class. And I do think that like the run could start at 33 with the Browns. It 100% could. But I also think what's interesting here is that the Browns' biggest rivals in Pittsburgh are the gatekeepers sort of this quarterback class. Because if Sanders falls, there's plenty of reporting, there's plenty of mock drafts that have Sanders going to the Steelers at number 21. And there's credence to that, or there's some validity in that, because Mike Tomlin, he has a thing for like these lineage players, right? TJ Watt, for example, Joey Porter Jr., a former Pittsburgh Steelers great, and his dad was a former Steelers great. Now you'd have Shedeur Sanders, the son of Deion Sanders. Like, there might not be a team in the NFL that has more like siblings, sons, brothers of other NFL players than the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so why not add another one? A guy, by the way, who's the son of a Hall of Famer. Not a bad idea in the grand scheme of things in terms of like building a roster. So I've seen both. I've seen it both ways, where it's like the Steelers don't really want Shedeur Sanders, but they didn't meet with him. They actually have their sights set on somebody else. I've also seen they could be the ones that pull the trigger at 21 if he falls. And so if that's where he falls, that I think then sort of triggers a number of teams being like, okay, we got to get up and get this next quarterback, which I think is probably going to be Jalen Milroe, who goes next after that, but it could be Jackson Dart as well. And so that's where like the Giants come into play. That's where the Browns come into play. That's where the Saints maybe come into play if they want one of these quarterbacks that I do believe they will pass on at 9 and take somebody else. And so because of all those things, like the Browns, I've said it already, but the Browns may have to jump the Steelers to potentially get a guy that they really like. And that isn't just Shedeur Sanders, by the way. I use Sanders as the first example, but the Steelers have also been heavily linked to Jalen Milroe. And apparently, like, their like for Milroe is like off the charts. They love the athleticism. They think they can turn him into something. There is something poetic about the Steelers potentially adding a quarterback who can just like run the ball down your throat, and then they hope they can develop into a better passer. Now, I don't know if I trust the Steelers to be the team to do that with somebody like Milroe, but I'm not saying it's impossible. And if he puts in the effort, sure, he absolutely could become like a player that you gamble on and a hit. He's like the most boom or bust quarterback I think there is, which is also why maybe the Steelers don't take a quarterback at 21 and they stick to the script. We know what the Steelers picks generally look like. They love taking D-line. They love taking offensive line. They love taking they are a meat and potatoes type team in that respect. And so I could see them just not even taking a quarterback at 21, but it feels like that's the team to watch because like if they do ultimately pass on any of these guys, then it's like, okay, now the dash is on to get up and get Sanders, Milroe, whoever it might be in the mid 20s rather than the early 20s. And again, the Browns sort of come into play to potentially do that. And that run, like I said, could come at any time. That's what's interesting about it is that whenever Milroe goes or Shador goes, it sort of triggers that next stretch of here's your chance, come get your quarterback. And so the Browns, while I have mocked numerous times them staying put, waiting on quarterback, maybe waiting for somebody like Tyler Shuck in like the third round, or even in the last mock draft I did on Monday, I had them waiting in the third round to get Jalen Milroe because he fell. I don't think that's how it's actually going to play out because, as I always say, my go-to rule when it comes to the quarterback position is that you almost always have to overdraft quarterbacks. It doesn't matter who it is. Cam Ward, for example, is being overdrafted. Like, just based on where he's graded, he's not the top prospect in this class, but because he's a quarterback and the Titans are drafting where they're drafting, they feel the need to take him. Like, you almost always overdraft these quarterbacks. And so it feels like the Browns may have to do that type of thing, be aggressive to get up and get a guy if they really, really like him. I have my doubts about them doing that, especially considering what they're going to have to give up to get a certain quarterback at a certain point. It's why I've said, like, the Shador Sanders dream, the dream for me of ending up with Travis Hunter and Shador Sanders, Shador has to fall to like the mid-20s for that to even really make sense, I think, for the Browns, for them to give up what it's going to take to move up. Now, like this, I already said, I don't think they're trading back to get more draft capital as a rebuilding team. I certainly don't see them like going all in for one player and paying more than what you'd have to pay to draft that guy from at a different spot just to get a quarterback that may or may not be the answer and have to give up like your third rounder, one of your third rounders this year, probably like a second rounder next year. Like, they need as many picks as they can get the next couple of years. And so while I think trading back to add more picks isn't going to happen, trading up and giving up more draft capital that you already have seems completely out of the question for this team right now. So I just don't see that happening unless it's going to be a more affordable price and like somebody like Sanders drops to the mid-20s. But you could also see them trade up to the mid-20s to get a Jalen Milroe if he falls. But it all kind of hinges, as I was alluding to, on what the Steelers are going to do at 21. And the Broncos are in an interesting spot because they draft 20. They don't need a quarterback, but they really need a running back. And so if they really want like an Amari and Hampton, they're going to probably stay put and draft them there. And then a team like the Browns is just going to have to sort of play the waiting game to see what Pittsburgh ultimately decides to do with that first-round pick that they have, and if they do end up taking a quarterback. So it's kind of this waiting game, and it's just ironic that it comes down to your biggest rival in the Pittsburgh Steelers to see what quarterbacks may or may not be available to you at 33, or at least after that point in the draft that you can maybe move up to get and feel like it's worth doing so. So just something to keep an eye on. I think we obviously will all be paying attention to that. And there is a little bit of irony there that it's that team of all teams sort of blocking your path or setting the stage for who you're going to have access to later in this first round, or even when day 2 starts with pick 33. Along those lines, and going back to Travis Hunter for a second, we talked a lot about what he brings to the table from a skill set standpoint. There's another thing that makes him a huge fit for Cleveland that I want to talk about. Plus, JOK is in the house. We'll talk about it. Not my house, the Browns' house. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with the Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required, Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 to Avowed. As easily as just stream your favorite shows, it's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV with 4K streaming, over 1.5 million movies, TV episodes, and more. Your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. You can get all your entertainment needs in one place with Amazon Fire TV, including your gaming fix that you want to maybe get in as well while you're sitting around at home. I'm a Fire TV stick guy. We have one on every TV in our house. It is our go-to device for streaming. And now that I know you can turn it into an Xbox and gaming platform, I may just take them up on that. Head to Amazon.com, Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller are required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and Fire TV Cube. All right, so we've talked so much about Travis Hunter from the standpoint of here's what he can do, here's what he brings to the table, here's why he's a good fit for the Browns as a wide receiver and even potentially mixed in as a corner. And those are the biggest reasons why you're drafting somebody. But there's another thing that I haven't talked about specifically, and I don't think many have talked about specifically enough, which is this idea that Travis Hunter is like just a really good charactered player in person. I mean, all we hear about is how this guy loves fishing and football, and that's it. He's got 2 F's in his life, fishing and football, and those are his focuses. And it's very like Joe Thomas adjacent or reminiscent, where Joe Thomas gets drafted and he's on this fishing trip with his dad when the news comes down that he's coming to Cleveland. Like that feels like a feature story in the making. It's like him and Joe Thomas sitting down and doing an interview together or whatever. So like it's a pretty remarkable thing that he is this invested and should get a player that's so into football. Like how many years do we every year we sit here, we analyze these draft prospects, and you always pinpoint guys. Maybe the best example that comes to mind is Josh Rosen, however many years back when the Cardinals took him in the first round. There were so many questions about him loving football or not, right? And that's always the big conversation is like, does he love football? Does he love football? I think this is happening with Ted McMillan a little bit, because he had those comments at one point during this pre-draft process that he doesn't love watching film. And so people ate that up and turned it into a whole thing about like, well, you can't draft him. He doesn't love film. He doesn't love football, whatever. And I get where those things come from. I think sometimes they're a little overblown, but I do think there is legitimate. I mean, Jed Wills, right? Here in Cleveland. People wondered about him loving football these last 5 years that he's been in Cleveland. So you want somebody who does care and who does love the game and the sport. And for the Browns, getting somebody who comes in instantly and is all about football, lives, breathes, and dies football, how can you go wrong with that, right? And so that's another intriguing aspect to the Travis Hunter connection, and something that I think is worth monitoring, or not worth monitoring, but worth like another reason that makes him worth being selected number 2 overall. Like this guy works his ass off. He puts in the effort. He puts in the time. He wants to be great. He wants to be great on both sides of the ball, nonetheless, which is hard enough to do. And he's not out there drinking and partying. This isn't like a Johnny Manziel situation where he comes in, he's taking his playbook to Vegas. Like, no, he's going to be diving into that thing, and he's going to be trying to get ready to give you the best rookie season he can possibly give you. Browns fans, I know, love people who can play on this team and are like as gritty and hardworking as Cleveland is as a city. Like it's the blue collar mentality thing. It's the LeBron quote about nothing is given, everything is earned in Northeast Ohio. They want that in their football players. And Travis Hunter is going to give you that. He is going to come in and give you that sort of mentality and mindset, which is, again, what makes him a perfect fit for Cleveland. I also think the character part of this is interesting because in the past, Andrew Berry and this regime have looked past character concerns for talent. And I understand why that happens. It's the NFL, right? Like, yes, that's always going to be part of the math in the game on finding players is, can we look past certain things to bring this guy in? I'm okay with that because it generally, to an extent, the Deshaun Watson thing was probably a bridge too far. But I understand we're like a guy who did something wrong in college, you give him a second chance, right? Like you give him a chance to come to the NFL and prove himself. And sometimes it backfires, sometimes it doesn't. I think we've seen plenty of examples recently of it backfiring for teams. But it's it's the risk that you take when you take these players, and that's always going to be a thing in the NFL, that the teams will be willing to take a chance on guys with shady past if it means they're getting a talented player. That you don't have to worry about that with Travis Hunter, though. And coming off of, I've talked so much this offseason about good PR moves. Nick Chubb re-signing him is a good PR move. Joe Flacco coming back, good PR move. Travis Hunter is again another like slam dunk of a PR decision. Again, comes in, loves football, wants to just focus on the game, wants to put in as a great effort in trying to be great, is going to work hard for you. There's no off the field concerns. And this organization could use that. They could use a guy who comes in with that acumen, that dedication, no off the field issues, that just is like clean as can be and is not going to be a character concern in any way, shape, or form, that the fan base can sort of rally around here, coming off of the heels of the Deshaun Watson debacle and everything that's come with that, and the fact that he still is on this roster just kind of lingering in the background while they sort of move forward at the quarterback position. So that's another part of this that hasn't been talked about, I don't think, enough. But yes, like from a PR standpoint, selling this move to the fan base and selling this move to the city, it's as easy as it gets when you're trying to put a tenuous part of your history behind you and a controversial part of your history behind you. You do it with players, and you start it with players this next era like Travis Hunter, who are just live, breathe, and die football and are have a good head on their shoulders. So it's yet another reason why it makes sense, yet another reason why he's a fit. And I thought it was worth at least talking about here on the eve of the NFL draft. By the way, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was captured on video walking into the Browns facility yesterday for the start of the offseason program. That's not for nothing. We keep getting these very, non-committal responses from Angel Berry and Kevin Stefanski on like where he's at, and understandably so. He's coming back from a very serious neck injury. I'm not expecting them to have like all the answers right now, but given that there were questions about whether he'd play ever again, and the fact that the team just, they're not posting videos like that, there's not some optimism that he's going to be okay. I wouldn't think. Like they kind of have just let him kind of be, and he's had to figure out from his own medical, get his own medical advice, get the team's medical advice. Like they don't usually broadcast stuff like with players on it, or put players like that are going through those types of situations outward in the open like that, if it's not like progressing in the right direction. So I just think that was a pretty telling and promising sign that the team's kind of promoting, hey, he's here, he's ready to work in some capacity. Even though we know he still is coming back from the very serious neck injury, and there's still time that's going to be dedicated to that. It was a small sort of victory and a nice update that I think fans will be happy to sort of celebrate here. That JOK was in the building, walking in, and seems like he's ready to get to work in some even small way here for the start of the offseason program. So another episode down with you, Dog Pound. Thank you for joining me as always to talk about your favorite football team. More to come this week. I've been teasing it. Tomorrow, Thursday morning, draft day is here. The best and the worst case scenario from my perspective on draft night coming up tomorrow on Thursday. I'll unveil mine. I want to hear yours as well. So hit me up at Spencito_ or in the comments section at the YouTube channel, Locked On Browns. And make sure you hit that subscribe button as well so you can make us your first listen every single day. For your second listen, check out our Locked On NFL mock draft if you haven't done so already. Or you can keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs, Locked On Guardians. Thank you for making the Locked On podcast, or thank you for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. Peace.